And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Music City Gold on the Penalty Box Radio Network. I am your host, Kyle. With me, as always, are my co-hosts, Daniel and Matt.
Hello.
Hey, guys.
Oh, a little loud there, Daniel. You feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm perfectly fine.
Okay, so before we were starting the show, we were discussing Matt's love of Lord of the Rings, and for the first time, he's actually getting through the series. So I know we've probably got some people on who listen to us who are big Lord of the Rings fans. So, Matt, give us your 1,000-foot view of how you enjoyed this series so far.
Well, I have to say, when we were younger, we watched it, and it was fine. But now I'm watching them all the way through, kind of sitting them back-to-back nights, and, one movie every night, and I'm starting to really appreciate it a lot more. And now that we've got into The Hobbits, it's really, really making it cement for me.
You're getting that backstory now, too.
Yes, which I think I like The Hobbits maybe better than the first two Lord of the Rings. The first Lord of the Rings I thought was kind of slow, which is maybe why I kind of had a disinterest in it. I was like, I want to see some action, I want to see some adventure, and it really took them through most of the movie to get there. Whereas after the first movie, it's a lot more action-packed and more my speed, so it's pretty awesome.
You're watching Collector's Edition, right? Like full on, 4 hours?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, good. Because that's you're going to get at least an hour extra pretty much of bonus scenes that are definitely more relevant, especially for Lord of the Rings more so than The Hobbit. So,
But those are fighting words, Matt, saying that The Hobbit is better than Lord of the Rings, because there's a lot of people out there that really believe, and I kind of agree with them, that The Lord of the Rings is better than The Hobbit in almost every way.
Well, it's odd for me because I'm not a subject matter expert. I'm kind of a noob at this stuff, and I don't really watch a lot of movies. But when I watched that third Lord of the Rings movie, The Return of the King, you said, I thought that was the best movie I've ever seen, probably. A few moments in that movie had me kind of emotional, and I was like, this is really awesome. So I can see what the fanfare is all about.
for me, it's like the second half of Two Towers onward is so ridiculous. If you think about it, because you have the Helm's Deep scene, all that is absolutely just incredible. And then it basically just launches you right into Return of the Kings, which is very much action-packed for you. I know you like more of the action sequences, but yeah, the end of Two Towers, so good. It gets me every time. The orcs out there stamping the ground. You got to listen to it on a nice surround sound where you get the subs going. So good. And then he blows the horn. Kyle, that's Kyle's favorite part. So
That is my favorite part of the Two Towers. So, Matt, what is your favorite part of the Two Towers, and what's your favorite part of Return of the King?
Well, I'll have to say, I don't know which movie's which. They kind of run together for me because I have the worst memory ever. But my favorite moments in the last three movies were each movie, Legolas gets one really bad boy awesome fight scene where he's sliding down on a shield of orcs and then
Helm's Deep.
and
That's
then
Helm's Deep,
crossbowing people as he goes down. He just gets one really epic scene, and I'm just shouting at the TV. I'm like, yes, that is what I'm talking about. So that makes it all the worthwhile for me.
So you like that scene, and then you like the elephant kill scene.
Yes.
Where he
yes.
slides off the trunk.
Yes.
See, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's Return of the King. So there you go. Those are your two Legolas scenes. So
I'll tell you, for me, Matt, my favorite scene of the Return of the King is at the very end. Sauron's defeated. Aragorn is now the king. Him and Arryn walk up to the hobbits, and I get chills every time I watch it.
So good.
And they go to bow for him, and Aragorn's like, "My friend, you bow for no man." And everybody just bows.
And they're the shortest people, too, in the room, so everybody's really got to bow low because they're the hobbits.
Yeah, I may have shed a tear during that scene. That
good.
Definitely, I felt that one.
Such an epic thing. And, we'll use this conversation to leapfrog into our topic because I have labeled this episode Bruce There It Is, because Bruce Boudreau, unfortunately, now is going to have enough time to do whatever he wants, because we found out yesterday, or I believe it was Sunday, one of the 2 days, that he has been fired by the Vancouver Canucks. If you listen to the broadcaster lady who really messed up everyone's stuff, go find it online. It's hilarious. But yeah, Rick Tocchet was hired to replace Boudreau.
See, Boudreau.
Yep, I messed it up.
You're talking like her right now.
I know, so we'll redo this again, even though. So Rick Tocchet was hired after Bruce Boudreau was fired as the head coach. 14 months he was in the position. Took over in December 21 after Travis Green was fired as the head coach, and GM Jim Benton was let go. And it was only 25 games into the season. He brings his team back, basically missed the playoff by 2 points. And, I feel like this guy was just done really dirty. And you could tell, the fan base thought he was done dirty too, because, they knew it was his last game. Everyone's chanting Bruce, there it is. And man, I'm not the biggest fan of the Canucks myself, but I am just a huge fan of Bruce Boudreau. And so, Daniel, we'll go start with you.
Yeah, so the Vancouver Canucks, as it's said nowadays, man, they are a dumpster fire right now as far as the front office and organization, because the way they handled this, absolutely ridiculous. Like, you could tell, too, in the arena that last night, as you're saying, like, all the fans totally behind Bruce. They're like, you'd seen the signs, Bruce, there it is. We stand for Bruce, because, like you said, he almost got that team that was, like, almost dead last into a playoff position last year. And quite frankly, I think he's just been set up for failure the whole time. Like, it just is what it is. He doesn't have the best team there. He's working with the best he's got. But to come in halfway through another one and then get fired halfway through another season is, like, really strange. I mean, like you said, 14 months, that's crazy short for a team that was already in the dump. You know what I mean? Like, that, it's totally different if you're coming in and the team was already, like, crazy high win percentage. Like, say somebody came into Vegas, who was it? Cassidy came into Vegas. That team was already bumping. So if he had a terrible win percentage, yeah, I can maybe see him be out. Being out in a year. But no, like, this team was in the dump. They're a lottery pick almost every single year for first. So I don't quite understand why. And it seemed to all resonate from their GM. And he was on record, and I know Matt did a ton of research on this, so he might echo some of these, but, like, even going back to November, he was very critical of Bruce on, like, radio talks, and then apparently, like, around Christmas, they already started shopping for coaches ahead of time and not telling him. So, like, they've already been, kind of going behind the scenes and trying to find somebody, basically just keeping him in the position just a little longer because they needed someone to be the head coach. And that's absolutely ridiculous for a coach of his pedigree. And you can tell what it means to him, too. Like, I mean, he was literally tearing up on the bench as he walked off for the Canucks for the last time, because, I think he said in his post-game interview, he's like, you never know if this is it, or, like, you'll overcoach again. I mean, granted, I feel like there's going to be some takers for him, given his pedigree and stuff, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But, I think they've done him dirty, and I really don't know why Rick wants to come in here and coach after him after seeing what they did to him. Honestly, like, that's my thing, is, like, they're treating everybody like trash right now. So, good luck, Rick. You got an uphill battle with that front office.
Matt?
Yeah, I heard a really good quote from Elliot Freeman the other day, and he said that you can tell a lot more. You judge an organization not by how it treats you when you come into the organization, but how it treats you when you leave. And I think this is a really telling situation with how they're treating Boost, because Jim Rutherford is the GM of the Canucks now, and he is personal friends with Boudreau. So some of the stats, go ahead and say you've got written down here for me, Kyle. Thank you. Teams that have coached under Bruce Boudreau, or teams that he has coached for at least one full season, have made the playoffs 9 out of 10 times, which is an outstanding, amazing stat. He has a win percentage of .626, which is fourth among all coaches with at least 500 goals. So you're talking about an all-time best coach. So not only is it disrespectful to fire him when he was doing a pretty good job, honestly. Like you said, Daniel, they were kind of in the dumps. He's raised the bar for the team recently. But really what the kicker isn't the fact that they fired him, it's how they went about it. So Jim Rutherford is known as a loudmouth. He runs his mouth all the time. You said even last year he's been known to run his mouth about how they're shopping around. Well, this got out again to the point where it was known before they fired him officially. It was already known 2.5 weeks prior that Tocchet was coming in, to the point that even on national television on TNT, where Biz and Tocchet are on Tocchet, and the boys actually rizzed Tocchet a little bit about the situation. They're like, oh, so you're going to go and take Bruce's job, and all this. And Tocchet was like, well, I hadn't signed the contract yet. He was kind of backing away, but they were rizzing him on national television, the fact that they already knew that Tocchet was coming to take that job, and nobody bothered to tell Bruce. So Bruce felt very disrespected, because it wasn't just rumors, it was truth, and it all because Jim Rutherford ran his mouth too much and let it be known. And to the point that after this happened, Jim Rutherford said, all right, well, now I'm going to have to take a step back, and I won't be the mouthpiece for the organization anymore. I'm going to just kind of sit back and do the the armchair moves and let whoever the next in line guy is, I forget his name, do all of the mouthpiece speaking for the organization, because I need to play a little more close to the vest, because he realized that he kind of did Bruce dirty in that situation.
Yeah, so some of the things that were brought up online was, with Rick being on TNT, that they had to give him ample amount of time in his contract for that deal to come through. And I've seen I've seen 4 weeks float around, 2 weeks, but that's crazy, because the fact that they had already done that and already did it a month or 2 weeks ago, and they still hadn't talked to Bruce about it, and they just let him go on, and then he's sitting over here what the crap, everybody? Seriously, now I guess I'm just replaced, and you didn't even have a conversation with me first. That is absolutely super unprofessional.
Yeah, I'm getting vibes of how they Vegas treated Fleury a couple years ago, and I'm still, as you can tell, salty about that situation, because these are the moments that stick with you and how organizations treat people, and that does leave definitely a bad taste in my mouth. And as a Vancouver fan, apparently the fans they were very appreciative of Bruce, but I don't know how you can be a backer of Jim Rutherford anymore, or the organization. That has to hurt your fan base. And I heard people talk about, I'd like to see, if the Vancouver Canucks was a stock market, how their prices would have looked over the last month or two, because they had to have been going wild, and they just have to do some damage control. It's just a real crap show in Vancouver. It's unfortunate.
So this kind of opens up a whole list of other conversations, because now we have some pretty good coaching candidates out there. Say the Preds were to make a coaching decision here soon. Say, finally we can, make a decision, which I don't think is going to happen, honestly, midseason. I feel like they're going to ride Hynes out the rest of the year, unless we go on a terrible run, which we can discuss, in great details. But what do you think about Bruce as a potential candidate for the Nashville Predators in the future?
I think it would be an excellent decision. As we've said, Bruce is well loved by people. His teams love playing for him. Every team he's played for, the players have said they give it his all. Even the players last night, knowing that Bruce was being let go, said they gave it his all for him. So I think he would be a great move to come into the organization. But as you said, Daniel, it depends on whether the Preds use Hynes throughout the rest of the season. And with respect to John Hynes, I think that is the right move. Whether or not he does get replaced by the end of the season, if you've got a coach, unless you're doing just abysmal, let him go through the end of the season and then make your decision on the offseason. But but I would love to have Boudreau come in and be the head coach for the Preds.
So some of the things that I was kind of looking into, Bruce's teams finish near top of the league almost every single year in goals. And what's the one thing that the Predators are struggling with right now? Goals for. We're literally almost the worst team in the league for goals, for scoring. And how great of a combo would that be to bring him in, to have a great offensive mind like he is, to boost the players here that we already have. You can bring up some of the other more offensive-minded players too from Milwaukee. And guess what? Bruce would also have an elite goaltender who's also giving you probably some of the best and arguably some of the best quality starts in the league right now. It's between him and, I guess, Hynese up in Boston, but even then, that team is stacked. Do you know what I mean? Saros is really carrying the team right now, and quite frankly, I think that's the only reason why Hynes hasn't been fired this year, is because literally Saros is on another Vezina possibly candidate year, and probably the only thing that's going to keep him from getting it is because Boston has way more wins than the Preds, but Saros means more to the Preds than they do right now for goaltending. But could you imagine that combo, having an elite goaltender and then bringing in an offensive-minded coach who literally flourishes with all these great players that would love to have their job? Forsberg would love to be underneath his system. I'm very confident of that. Our power play might look a lot different than it currently is. So that said, I'm for it, but it is going to be interesting to see how they the next couple games in particular too, going into the All-Star break, because if they're going to make anything, it would probably be around a clean break point. The only way I see Hynes getting fired is if we get swept up to then, and even then, I feel like he's gonna ride him out a little bit longer. Now that said, though, I did not think Poyle would ever fire a coach mid-season, And when Lively got fired, that kind of shocked me. Because remember, like, basically it was right after the Winter Classic. It was like a downhill spiral, like, and then there was a bad performance there, and that was it. So GMDP has made the decision before in the middle of a season to fire a coach. So I do want to throw that out there as a very interesting point. It has happened before. So
I think we're fanboying a little bit. I would like to see it. I think we all would like to see it. That was one of our major criticisms when Hynes came in, was that he really hasn't, I don't know, he's just not an outstanding performer, and we wanted somebody with a little more metal. I felt that the John Hynes situation was like a short-sighted, like a put a Band-Aid on it, as opposed to looking more long-term. I thought that you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot in no man's land for 3 to 5 years, which is looking like what's going to happen. I think John Hynes is getting rode out for at least the end of this season, probably next season, and then they're going to finally get tired of him. We'll see. I think David Poile doesn't like to shift gears very fast, so I think he's going to hold on to his decisions for a couple years. But that being said, something that we haven't mentioned about Bruce Boudreau yet was that the way he handled it, he was tearing up on the benches, and he was also in a post-game interview was kind of tearing up and had to leave because he's about to start to cry. Very emotional guy. You can see him drop a lot of F-bombs and stuff as he's coaching. But he handled it so well, pure class. He didn't criticize the organization, and he handled it so well that everybody said, well, we'd love to see him on our team. Apparently he's done some media work, so he could be in a broadcast booth sometime, but whatever it is, everybody knows that he's a man of great talent. He's been in the league, in the hockey league really for almost 50 years probably. And it was interesting. He scored his first goal against Jim Rutherford, the guy that fired him. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but interesting.
Well, it makes me wonder, with Bruce Boudreau leaving, how the players are going to react, because, two big names on the NHL trade board because they're becoming UFAs is Bo Horvat and Brock Besser. I mean, would these guys want to play for a team that did their coach dirty? I know if it was me, I wouldn't. I'd say move me somewhere else. I think it was Brock Besser, I think, that it turned down an $8 million 8-year contract, multi-million dollars. I mean, that tells you something. That one of those guys goes, yeah, I don't want to play for you guys, and I don't care how much money you give. That just kind of shows you how he thinks. Daniel?
Hey, so we've actually been throwing this around, too, about some of the potential trades, which we can talk about for the Preds, because the Preds are, apparently, they have already reached out to the Canucks about actually trying to work out a trade for Bo or Brock, which I would love to have either, I feel like, but it just depends on what we would have to give up, which I think Fabro is in the mix with that conversation with him being an RFA coming. So I feel like it would potentially be like Fabro, maybe one other and a pick, to swap out for Bo or Bruce. But what is very interesting now in the conversation is what happens if, like, we struggle, we make a coaching change too, Bruce comes in, and then you also trade for one of the players that played for him. So then you would end up getting basically the head coach for the Canucks and one of the players for the Canucks at the same time, which I was like, that would be kind of interesting. But at the same time too, that's way a long shot in the betting world there. But so those are the top two ones, but the Preds have been tied to that. So, I mean, we can talk about maybe potential trade offers for that, but I definitely think it's got to be Fabro and some others, because, they gotta make a little bit more cap space.
But I think if you're unloading a player of Besser's talent, or Horvat for that matter, that speaks to that you're in a buyer's market as your team. And I don't necessarily know that the Preds are in that mindset right now, although it could be a good fit, just for having a player. But when you're talking long-term deals, you're starting to project in the near future, 3 or 4 years. And I don't know if that's particularly the position that David Poile wants to put himself in with acquiring a new talent at the moment. But, a good deal is a good deal, so we'll see.
Well, it also brings up an interesting point about our cap space, because should Brock or Bo come down to the Preds and we look up who we've got to give up for him, there's obviously some wiggle room on the cap space. Currently right now, the Preds have a projected cap hit of $80 million. Their projected cap space is 2.1, and their current cap million space is $5 million. So it looks like there is some wiggle room in there. But besides Fabro or a draft pick, who else would you be willing to give up to make the cap space that either Brock or Bo would command?
So I was just looking that up. So Brock is at a 6.6. Bo is actually at a 5.5, which is very interesting. So that's actually the person who I would probably lean more towards getting. 5.5 might be doable if you are looking at trying to get rid of some spacers. So what do we have? 2.1. Then we would have to get rid of definitely Fabro, right? How much does Fabro have on the list here?
He is 2.4.
2.4. So just with that one piece, you're actually getting very close to making it work. So and there's some other ones that have been thrown out too that are going to be RFAs that you could possibly lump in with the deal. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely doable. It's just how much are you wanting to give up? Now, the funny part is too, and one of the reasons why I wanted you to look at the cap is recently, the Preds are actually carrying less players right now, and I don't know if you guys noticed that. So they're carrying one less player because I thought for sure they were going to call up another person once McCarron was waived and made it through, because that cleared more cap space. But they never filled the position back, which I thought was very strange. So to your point earlier, Matt, the Preds are kind of in this awkward spot where it's like, do we stay put and just kind of almost like fizzle out and get a higher draft pick, or do we buy some, or like, maybe if it's a good deal, you just buy anyways, But that said, the fact that they did not backfill that position to carry on, because they have the cap space. They could easily call up anybody from Milwaukee. Tomasino is killing it right now in Milwaukee. He probably honestly should be on the roster to begin with, but he's not. So why are you not bringing somebody up when you have a clear vacancy? Almost gives you a sign that they are buyers right now, leading up to the at least to the NHL trade deadline. I feel like they might be a little lean, because I thought that was super strange that they did not call somebody back up after they reassigned somebody back down. That like never happens. And then you notice like we end up, like last time we had 1.4 million on the cap. Now we're at 2.1. So that's clearing cap space already for maybe a potential trade. So just an interesting note. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, that is odd, especially when you can just bring up an AHL guy and just slot him in. That doesn't mean you're not in the market. That just means you have more assets to use. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I'd like to hear the backstory on why the decision was made that way, because that is a little curious. It could be telling of something. There might be something structurally like happens in the organization that we're not really privy to about how it works that way, but it is odd to see.
Well, you think about it like this. You gain that cap space. So they gained like what, $700,000 in cap space. Yeah, you are lighter, but say you called up somebody else and then you end up having to trade, and then you have an extra roster person, and then you end up having to send somebody back down. Well, then you have to waive them again, and they have to go through the waiver wire again, so they could potentially get picked up again.
Okay,
so that's why I was kind of like, very interesting that they're just not pulling somebody up at this point. I feel like that will end up, it'll all work out, because whether you trade for multiple assets, then you end up having to call more people up, which honestly I think might be the best decision, is trade some, bring up some of those young guys who are actually doing good, Tomasino, i.e., pulling maybe another veteran. Then you still are very close to the cap, you're under it, and then you still get some, new youth coming up too that it's not really new when, the kid played 76 games last year for us. But that said, it is, you don't have to send him back through the waiver wire. So,
You want to know a statistic that's going to hurt your feelings? So we talked last week about how Ely Tolvanen is crushing it in Seattle. Now he has more goals with Seattle than 10 forwards for Nashville. More goals than Granlund, Parsonen, Glass, Novak, Jankowski, Jeanette, McCarron, Sanford, Sherwood, and Smith. And you just traded them away.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I know. I'm well aware, because I saw that immediately, and I was just like, I mean, it just is what it is. David Poyle's comments on that, though, were hilarious, because he's like, well, if that was like, if that's, what happens and he ends up doing really well, then that's my bad. And I'm like, congratulations. Yes, it is your bad, because you're the one that waived him. So everybody thought he was going to make it through off of a casual $1.4 million contract that now Seattle has him for. That's ridiculous.
You know, it's funny. I was reading about Tolvin the other day, and because he was talking with somebody in Seattle about his time in Nashville, and he said that, I'm assuming Hynes at this point was basically telling them that he was one day going to be a goal scorer for one game. The next game, he's going to be a checker. And it kept going back and forth. They gave him no consistency. He said he never got a consistent thing. It was either one day he's checking and on the third or fourth line, or they're wanting to be a goal scorer and trying to put him on the first or second line, and he just could not get a rhythm, which I think attributed to the fact that we were like, man, this guy ain't doing good. Then see him going to Seattle, like you said, Matt, and he just, showing just how good he actually is. And I think the Preds have a black mark on them because it's like, that's going to go down as probably one of the worst things Boyle could have done as the GM.
Terrible decision to waive him, but terrible decision on Hynes for putting him in that position where you're flip-flopping him back and forth every night. Why is he a checker? He's not a checker.
Yeah.
What the crap? Like, literally, if you look at every KHL tape of him, he's lighting it up with his wrist shot. He's on the power play. Guess what? He goes to the Kraken. They swap him over to his better side, put him on the dang power play, and put him in the spots where he needs to, and he's sniping again. What do you know? He's not having to check because he doesn't check. He's not a check person. You got Mark Burowicki for that. Like that makes no sense. So that's on Hynes for flip-flopping back and forth. And then if Hynes was the one who's like, oh, it's not really working out, then GMDP was like, okay, well, then we'll waive him because I have to do something. So it's honestly on both of them, but if that's the case, it sounds more like it was Hynes' problem because he couldn't make it work in his system.
Yeah, the world-famous John Hynes system, whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, I don't know.
If you can't tell, the Preds have made me mad the last couple of months, so it's hard to call myself a big Preds fan at the moment.
I guess the next question is, do we really think the Preds are going to make the playoffs? I mean, I looked at it today, and
19%.
we are 5 points behind Calgary for the last wild card spot. And as I've said before, usually by Thanksgiving to this time, the lineup is generally set about who's going to be the playoff-capable teams and who the bubble teams are going to probably be. And we're not even a bubble team. We're literally just trying to catch up. And so I don't understand why we would try to buy, because I don't think we're going to be able to recreate the famous St. Louis miracle where they come from January at this time and then make it all the way to the playoffs and win. So, I mean, it's just crazy. So, Dan?
Next 3 games. Jets. Killing it. They're absolutely on fire. Vegas Golden Knights. On fire as well. The New Jersey Devils. On fire as well. We got 3 top 10, the top 7. There are 3 top 7 teams in the next 3 games. And the Preds are already gassed because, as I pointed out the other night, it was like this schedule here recently has been crazy how many games they've played. There's been 2 or 3 back-to-backs, and the only reason why they've gotten several of those was because Saros is like lighting it up. I mean, he's one of the best goaltenders in the league right now. And oh, it's so frustrating because you're seeing one of the best goaltending talents get sucked into a system that can't score more than 3 goals a game and give him the support he needs to win more games. And it's like, at what point do you just cut your loss with Hynes and say the system isn't working? As the general manager, the system isn't working. I have to make a change. You go get somebody else who is more offensive-minded, and then you already have Saros because Saros has several more years of good production like this in him. So if you make a change now, you will eventually be able to have great goaltending and possibly a good offense. But the problem is right now, you don't want to make a decision. Like you said earlier, you're just stuck. And you're just going to be stuck with Hynes the next 2 years. And then after that, well, what's the degradation on Saros' performance after that point? You see what I mean? Like, you're wasting some of the best goaltending talent on the worst coaching system for goal scoring.
Another aspect to it is, even if you were, so it's really hard to see your biases. You're like, oh, John Hynes is thinking, David Poyle is thinking a certain way, and he's kind of biased towards these viewpoints. Well, that's one thing, but it's really hard to to see in yourself that you have these biases. But say even he noticed, oh, maybe my mindset needs to change and maybe I need to be looking this direction. Well, the problem is even if you see that you have an error and that you're the reason for the error, it's very difficult for people to acknowledge that and to own up to it and say, I really screwed the pooch on that trade, that draft pick selection, whatever it was, and they roll over on it and then make a different decision that kind of sit on your hands and just say in public that you messed it up. I saw Eisenman did that the other day, actually. I forget exactly the situation, but he traded or waived one guy that he stuck very highly in the draft and kind of just owned up to it and said, yeah, that was my bad. And you went on about your business. But it's very difficult for GMs, I think. It's a very proud league, especially the old-timers. So especially like David Poile, who's been around the block for a little bit, I think it's very difficult for them to roll over because it makes them look weak, honestly.
Well, how much of this is actually on the offense as well, too? Because as I was gathering information for this, I looked at our current, fanboy that we like to talk about, Connor McDavid, and looked up his season stats,
Oh, my Lord.
and it is stupid. So let me go find them here. Yeah. So Connor McDavid has 88 points
Already.
40 goals, 48 assists. And I'm like, if only one of our guys could play like him, but I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what we can do to fix the situation outside of trading a player as a wake-up call that's not Fabro, or get rid of the head coach. Because if you look, you got Philip Forsberg, 39 points in 46 games, 18 goals. He is the top goal scorer for the team. 21 assists is great, but it's like Roman Josi, 39 points, 12 goals, 27 assists.
He's a defenseman, too, by the way.
Yeah, a defenseman. Forsberg should be having more than Roman Josi, but, Josi is also a special case, too. Then you got Matt Duchene, 36 points, 13 goals, 23 assists in 45 games. Mikhail Granlund, I'm okay with because we know what we're going to get out of him. He's primarily an assist machine.
Yeah.
5 goals, 22 assists, 36 games. Ryan Johansson, 24 points, 5 goals, 22 assists. I would like to see more production out of Joey because
Everybody would.
everybody would. He's 8, what is his contract?
$8 million,
Yeah,
buddy.
$8 million. And it's like you give me 5 goals for $8 million.
Oh, that's brutal, bro.
Yeah, it's bad.
Ugh,
It hurts. So, I mean,
bad.
but you know what? We do have one good sliver ray of hope. Cole Smith got his goal.
Oh, God.
He got his goal.
Okay, we can talk about this for a second. So, meanwhile, we have Cole Smith, who has played, I don't know, what are we at? 40, where are we at? Goal 46 games. We've played 46 illustrious games, and he got his first goal of the season while there are other people like Tolvanen getting waived and going away. And for whatever reason, Hynes wants this guy in there.
So that's
Blows my mind once again because he called him like an 82 game player or whatever.
That was actually Dan
I
Hino.
know. They've called him an 82 game player.
why would you say that?
And I'm like, if he's just bruising people, we have other people for that job. Like we really do. And if you are one of the worst offensive teams in the league, then why is Cole Smith on the team taking up cap space and taking up any fresh air when you could go pull any of those younger kids from Milwaukee that are just killing it right now, like Tomasino, Evangelista. You have all these other ones in the wings that are offensive-minded, yet you don't want to go get them. Are you pulling up the list? Yeah. Tomasino. That's a good one. Sanford's already been on the team once. We already tried that experiment. You have Afanasev, Evangelista. I mean, we tried Sherwood there for a bit. Sherwood got more goals than Cole Smith did. That's for sure. Remember that? We had that experiment for like 2 games, which I didn't really understand because he actually scored a couple, and then he had a couple where he didn't have anything, and then we sent him back down. So whatever. His time was very short. I mean, we haven't even looked at Joachim, who's been killing it in the Finnish league, but he'll be over here eventually. So that's my thing is like, okay, here's a crazy point, and I started noticing this. our team has drafted really well the last several years. Really well. But most of those players have either gotten underutilized or been piddled away. And it's almost comical at this point. How many people that we've traded away that are doing very well, but our team has drafted very smart and well. So that point, that really hurts me because, like, I have this thing where I don't want Poyle in anymore. But Poyle is obviously doing something right in the scouting department. And he is. And that's what's super frustrating is because, like, if he could just get over his bias on some of these coaches or whatever and just get the right guy in, and maybe to the point when Lavi was fired, I think if we go back to that, there wasn't very many options, I think, Matt, like you were saying. Wasn't Hynes almost like the option?
Yeah, it was slim. But I'll tell you, a lot of teams, like I know this way in Detroit, the GM doesn't do the scouting for the draft picks. It's somebody else. They outsource that. So they outsource that to Nick Lidstrom. In Nashville, I would be surprised if GMDP is the one doing the draft selection. Well, they make selections, but as far as the scouting, so I don't know that I would necessarily credit David Poyle with doing the best scouting. It's some guy who works for the organization.
Yeah, it's the staff, but he hired that person. You see what I mean? Like, that's the thing is he's hired those people in the organization that's making the picks. So that's the frustrating part to me is, like, you look at some of these picks, they've been steals. Like, Tolvanen was a steal, yet we waived him. Okay? So, I mean, who's some of the other ones? Like, Parsonen actually was like a 6th or 7th round pick. He's now playing and getting decent production. Like, Askarov, great pick. Evangeliste, great pick. Like, these are all very recent within the last 3 to 4 years, and these are panning out very well, and they look like to be very good prospects. Joachim, the last one from this last year, everyone was like, oh, man, he's got a really good shot. Like, I think the Predators kind of stole one here. Sure enough, he goes into the World Juniors, lights it up over there, looks great. He's looking great in the Finnish league. Looks like he's going to be a great goal scorer. That said, it's like that's the frustrating part is we don't have it's like we are drafting well on very minimal, yet we cannot get any production from the coaching side because we had to get a coach in here, and that was the only option at the time. And now we're stuck with him, and because he doesn't want to can him.
Yeah, I don't think it's a roster problem. I agree. It's a coaching or a mentality. I call it. The problem is asset management and asset allocation. So you have the staff, you have the roster to do something. You just have to. The classic example of how you use Tolvanen. He's a goal scorer. He's a Patrick Laine modeled player, and yet you're utilizing him as a checker, a grind line guy, and that's not it. So that tells me you're fundamentally using players not to their strengths, which is a coaching thing. And coaches take the fall for everything. They're easy to be dumped and trashed and get a new one. And so honestly, I think that's the better Preds. The best thing the Preds could do is probably get rid of him and go for something else. But
yeah, Kyle, pull this up really quick because I this is something I want to see kind of where we're at roster wise. I know we've had some kids like absolutely kill. It's like Sherwood's way up there. Holy smoke! I had no idea he had 26 points already. Tomasino is really standing out there. He's almost at a point per game pace. What is that? 31 games played, 28 points. That's pretty good. So
yeah, but that's great. Yeah, we got great talent, but the bigger issue is still, which we've been talking about it all night, is the management of the talent.
Well, but that's my whole point. Is like you're sitting here looking at this list, like why aren't some of these kids coming up? You know what I mean? Like, why do you have a Cole Smith who took 46 games to get a goal?
That's crazy. I didn't realize that. That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, like that's why it was such a big deal the other night when he scored. Everybody was like, "Yeah, he scored!" And people were flipping out, like he's getting a standing O in Bridgestone. Because I'm like, yeah, because it took you 46 games to score one goal, and I'm like, you got almost a point per game player sitting on the bench who literally played 76 games for us last year and also had way more goals and way more assists. He already has a proven track record of scoring more goals and assists in the NHL, and you just have him in. Like I said, this year has been so frustrating as a Preds fan. Like you said, it's so hard to get on the bandwagon with them because of the asset management. It's like frustrating at this point.
And something that kind of goes along with it as a fan, It's like, I'm a Detroit fan. Well, Detroit has sucked for like 8-ish years. And, Detroit fans, we still are Detroit fans. Why is that? We're not super frustrated at the organization. Why is that? Well, it's because we have a plan, and they're kind of open about saying, here's the assets we're trying to acquire. Here's what the plan is we're trying to do. We're trying to draft. We're trying to do this and this. And you go along and you're trying to follow a prescribed formula to give you hope that say, well, it might suck right now, but here's what we're looking forward to, and here's how we're going to make it better. The problem with the Preds is you're seeing some frustration in being in no man's land, but yet you don't really have a plan or you don't know where you're going. So it's like, well, are you buyers? Are you trying to acquire new talents like Bo Horvat? Or are you trying to be a seller? Are you trying to get rid of John Hynes? It's almost like David Poile plays things so close to the vest that we as fans don't have any idea where we're headed, and that's what's frustrating. Is we're screeching our tires here. We just need to see some progress in some direction, then I can get on board as long as I see something.
So the problem is like they say something, but they don't do that something. Okay, so like Detroit was terrible for years, but then they got Steve Yzerman, and Steve Yzerman's very laser focused. So obviously going to be a lot better. It's taken a few years. You're getting back there. Okay, you know what I mean? You're getting back up there. Poile keeps saying, oh, we're doing competitive rebuilds, or, oh, we're going to embrace the youth. That's what he said. Embrace the youth. Have we really done that while waiving Tolvanen and keeping some of the others in Milwaukee? We haven't. Like, that's the thing is, like, and to your point, Matt, like, there's always in the middle. Like, the last several seasons have just been in the middle, and you need to pick. Like, it has now gotten to the point where you have to pick. Do you want to tank, or are you buying? Do you want a new coach, or are you riding this one out? Like, you have to just make a decision at this point, because otherwise you're gonna be left with one. And honestly, if you pick one or the other, one of those options is going to happen. Because if you stay with Hynes, it's probably going to tank a little bit. I'm just gonna be honest. So, like, you just need to make the decision and go with it at this point. But I'm very interested to see where we're going to be come trade deadline. Because when's the NHL trade deadline?
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Oh my gosh, I cannot wait, because this is going to be the telltale sign. You have 3 tough games, which we could potentially lose all 3 in a row, despite Saros being amazing, and then still going to All-Star break limping. At that point, Poile has got some hard decisions to make. He's going to take, I guarantee you, he'll have to take a hard look in the mirror over the All-Star break if we lose the next 3, because at that point, you're pretty much out of the race. You're going to be down to like 10% probably for making the playoffs. It would take a miracle run at this point, and probably other teams to struggle. So you're down to like 10%. You need to take a hard look in the mirror on firing Hynes if you lose the next couple.
Well, you're talking about a miracle run here. So we've got other people on the trade board that could possibly help the Preds, but realistically, I don't think they would be somebody that GMDP would look for. So as we mentioned, you've got Bo Horvat and Brock Besser coming available for Vancouver. Arizona, you've got Jacob Chikrum, Shane Gottisbehere, and Nick Bustag for Arizona. If Hynes wants a huge checker, he can get it in Bustad. All 6'6" of that guy. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Taves are coming available in Chicago, but I've read they're gonna probably stay with Chicago.
Yeah, Kane's gonna be way too much too.
What about Ryan O'Reilly or Vladimir Tarasenko from St. Louis?
I would like Tarasenko, but how much is he going to command? Once again, you've already signed all these big contracts. That's the thing, is like you need like a sub-6 player, sub-6 mil. Like you can't go out and get another 8 million player. So that crosses off several of these immediately, because some of them are wanting to cash in.
And you've got Lars Eller in Washington, James Van Riemdijk for Philadelphia, and Tyler Bertuzzi for Detroit.
I love Bertuzzi too.
I'm very mad that you have him on the list. I didn't realize that he has been up in the discussion for being on the trading block. I was just lamenting to you guys, he got hurt again the other day, so this is his 3rd injury of the year. If he gets traded, I'm done with Detroit, man. I am riding this boy. Like, I was hard on Tolvanen. Like, that's my money guy. Bertuzzi is my guy for Detroit.
I really like Bertuzzi, and it would probably be at a bargain because of all the injuries recently. So if you could get him and then he becomes healthy, that would be kind of a good one to look into. I mean, I would definitely give them a call and see what they're wanting, but we'll see.
But Matt, if Bertuzzi gets traded, since he is your boy, are you going to become a full-blown you guys because I know you have a clear distinction, especially when we podcast and even with games, about you're either all in on the Preds or it's I'm not part of this at all. So if Bertuzzi gets traded, are you completely done with Detroit for good and going to come to the
Just said
Preds?
he was.
Oh no way, no way. That's just hyperbole, Kyle. That's just hyperbole.
It will be crushing though for him because that's like
I'll get the jersey if he plays for Nashville, and he'll be my favorite Nashville player for sure. But I'm gonna get crushed mentally. But that's just the way the year's been going for us, boys. I don't know what to say.
Well, Detroit started off a lot hotter and they really fizzled out. So that it's kind of almost frustrating for you guys too. So I mean, we haven't really mentioned it because we didn't want to poke the bear, but
It's still been a better year than we've seen in at least 6 years.
No, they improved. They are improving under his plan. It's just going to take a little longer.
Trust the wiser plan, buddy.
Just a few more years. I think 2 more years, and Detroit's going to be right back in it. It's just there's so many youth right now. Like it's just there's still so many mistakes because they're so young, but they're embracing the youth.
And I'm
okay with.
I heard from Elliot Friedman today that apparently they're having some struggles with getting Dylan Larkin re-signed. So he could potentially be out the door.
Really hurt.
And that would be absolutely devastating.
So we're just because we're on it. That would hurt your rebuild because honestly, that's a piece to build around, not trade away.
Yeah, he's a franchise player.
Yeah, that's a franchise player. That would really hurt if he walks away. I think that would actually stunt you at least a year. Put you guys back.
Yeah.
It'll put you back another year. So I'm sorry. So that's just my take on it. Which, oh man, you got to sign him.
Yes, please. For God.
Well, Matt, you could also, if Larkin doesn't get signed and Bertuzzi goes away, I got a feeling you're going to jump on the Boston bandwagon for good.
Bro, I'm so on the
Gosh,
Boston
they're so
Boston bandwagon this year, buddy. They have been crushing.
Okay, we have this pulled up right here. They have an 81 goal differential right now. 81 with a .848 win percentage. They've only lost 5 times in regulation.
Pull up, Kyle. Hit the differential on
it's
points.
I think 40. I think 40 is Toronto.
Yeah.
42 is Dallas. Okay.
Almost twice the goal differential of second place. 81 goal differential for Boston, 42 for Dallas. Twice as many goals in differential.
Yeah, but also Dallas has more than double the losses in both categories.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling how good they are this year.
If you're going to be a skeptic to Boston, the only thing you could say is they have had quite an easy schedule the first half. So they're kind of bullying some of the small children in the schoolyard, but they're legit. I mean, they might not be a top 10 God mode of all time, but they're the best team in the league still. So
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where they're at win percentage. It's going to be up there with the Tampa team, I feel like, recently. Like, because what did Tampa finish a couple years ago? It was very high. Top, I guess you could Google that really quick. Top finishes. Oh, well, we can just look at this really quick. Yeah, it's a great little tab menu league. Yeah, I can't remember. So Florida last year was really good, but they only finished with a .744 win percentage. Boston's like .845, so they're like a full point above what they were.
I've been watching.
Crazy.
I've been watching the Boston games, but honestly, their broadcast team is a little hard to watch because they really stroke off Boston all night. Like there's no let up. Like I get on to Chris Mason for acting like Chris Mason acts like Alexei Yemelin's a sniper and stuff like this. They're kind of like hometown boys, which is fine, but you just you have to give it a little bit. But in Boston, it's like all game long. They're talking about the Boston, how dominant they are, how good everybody is. It's relentless. And I like Boston, but I might have to occasionally switch to a different feed here.
Bro, it's not even close. We've gone back to 2019 and like all these teams are .74 and lower, and they're at a .84 right now win percentage. That is,
what's that, like roughly 17% higher?
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, absolutely crazy. If they can sustain this for the whole year, I mean, it would be like one of the best seasons all time for a team. So
let's go, Brad Marchand.
Congrats, though. I just hope they can get past the hump in the playoffs. So
no problem, buddy.
We'll see this year.
And so as we get ready to close the episode out, I can think of very few ways to finish this episode. To ironically talk about the fact that Connor McDavid hates the shootout as being one of the worst ways to possibly end a game. And I kind of have to agree with him. Shootouts suck. Give me 5-minute overtime over and over till we get a winner. You guys agree?
Bro, I love 3-on-3 overtime. Like, you can't give me enough of that in my veins. I mean, because it's pretty exciting to watch because there's always a blown play. Somebody falls down. You have the odd man rushes. Personally, I would just like the 3-on-3 until somebody wins. That's just me. But shootout's been around a long time. So it's one of those, it's going to be very difficult for them to pull the plug on it. I don't see that happening anytime soon, but that was one of the best things that the NHL could have done was implementing the 3-on-3 OT for 5 minutes. I mean, maybe at first, let's double it. Let's take it to 10 minutes. And I'm sure that would cut out probably a good portion of the shootouts. I think maybe that's your solution is like shootouts just become very special. You know what I mean? Like very rare. If you go to 10 minutes, I would hope somebody scored within 10 minutes on the 3-on-3.
That's the theory that the longer you go on, the less likely it would be to go into a shootout. But, it's odd that Connor McDavid is saying that he hates the shootout because he's like the best skills player of all time. So for him to say he doesn't like it is remarkable. But I think it speaks to ending the game in a skills contest, something you should see at an all-star competition as opposed to ending the game with the game of hockey, like a 3-on-3 at least. It's faster paced, but at least it's hockey. It's not a skills contest. And I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's great. Fans get to see Patty Kane out there with some shake and bake, and that's great to watch. But it does kind of hurt that you play the whole game and then you end in a one skill challenge. It kind of feels unauthentic to how the game should end. So I'm with him, but I don't think we'll see that change, at least not in the coming years. So it's interesting to think about.
Well, even to do the 10-minute change, I think one of their immediate counterpoints to that is going to be like, well, we want the game shorter and we don't want it to prolong. So, like, you're already extending it another 5 minutes, which I get because, that's the main thing. It's like, obviously, like in the playoffs, it can go, triple, quadruple. We've been there for one of them, Kyle. Triple overtime. You're there till 1:30 in the morning. It's a long game. And I understand the regular season, they want to cut that down. So adding more time is kind of like something that they don't want to do. But I would love to just to see 10 minutes flat. And then it has to go to a shootout.
I will say that Wayne Gretzky went on record by saying that he would like to see a rule change to the 3-on-3 overtime in that they can't travel past center ice, kind of like how in basketball you can't go back to the defensive end, which is a frustration point that I've noticed in 3-on-3. You say it's very exciting. It can be, but for the most part, I think players are so conservative that they don't want to blow, a 2-on-1 break the other way or whatever, that they regroup, they toss around, they get a casual line change, they regroup behind the goalie. They waste so much time playing conservative because they're too afraid to mess up that it actually doesn't force them to make a dynamic what you want to see from it happening.
So what they're doing is they use the neutral zone and they keep possession to trap the other team in there so that they can't get that change because it's a long change. You got to remember it because it goes back to the long change on OT for 3-on-3. So I actually do agree with Gretzky because if you made it to where you couldn't travel back past the half line, you would have to immediately come out of the blue zone and basically go right back in to where you are attacking and in their zone again, where now they'll come skate back out and they'll do that huge loop-de-loop around center ice while they get changes, but then the other team has to stay put because they're trapped. That's the main strategy. Yeah. Possession is like everything for OT. So I actually would like that change because it would make it even more exciting because you physically have to get back in their zone and cycle again. Yeah. Does that make sense?
It turns like a boxing match in a big square face of like 15 feet. It turns it into like a boxing match in a phone booth. It makes it more dynamic. You got more action. I like it. It's a good idea.
Yeah, that would be something that I would like to see.
So Matt, we're gonna actually finally close the episode out for real now. What kind of stats you got for us?
Okay, I'd like to throw a little hat tip to the Kraken the other night. They were playing Chicago, and they had 6 goals on 7 shots to start the game, which is absolutely insane. They're also been destroying it on the road this year, apparently. So hat tip to them. They're killing it. Also, sneaky, the Buffalo Sabres have 5 players that have 40 or more points, which is number 1 in the league right now. And they have 3 players that have 20 goals, and that's second most in the league. So the Sabres are really finding a way to do some scoring, which is not something you've been seeing in recent years from them. So it's a breath of fresh air. I know I was watching Rasmus Dahlin last night when my dad was over, and he was like, "Oh, that kid, he doesn't look like he's from around here." I was like, "Yeah, I think he's from Sweden." So got some people taking a notice of of Buffalo. So it's nice to see them at least do pretty good, at least scoring wise. And a couple milestones I mentioned, Kyle. My boy Erik Karlsson's having a throwback year this year. We thought he was kind of tailing end of his career. He still might be, but at least he's got some production going on. Now he's the fourth D man in the last 30 years to have assist in 9 straight road games, joining the likes of Makar, Yossi, and Brian Leach. And also, your boy, Sid the Kid Crosby, now ties my boy, Teemu Selanne, for 17th all-time in points. So, good for Crosby.
And Daniel, what games do we have coming up?
Well, already kind of alluded to this. So tonight's Winnipeg, very tough challenge. And then Thursday is the New Jersey Devils, also a very tough challenge. And then we're going to get into the All-Star break. Much needed break for the Preds. They've been limping in. But it doesn't really get much better because, we got Vegas on the other side, and then we have a little bit of a lull with Philly and Arizona, and then it ramps right back up going into the last portion of our season here. So next couple weeks going to be very interesting. Like I said, tough games. A couple more weeks before the NHL trade deadline. We lose these next 2. It's going to be some good reflection for Poyle over the break to try to figure things out. So.
And guys, that is the show for today. If you like us, you can find us on Twitter at Music City Gold. You can also find us on YouTube at Music City Gold. And you can also find us at penaltyboxradio.com. Until next time, we will see you on the ice.